Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order, and I would like to ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
All council members are present.
Would you all please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the April 12th, 2022 meeting and the agenda of the April 26th, 2022 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
The only change is the presentation from the TEDx Kids will not be occurring this evening.
Thanks. Council, any agenda changes? No. Actually, then I will need a motion to approve the agenda change. So moved. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're at presentations, and for our first presentation, it is the Youth of the Year Award. I'd like to invite the Teen Coalition to come up and tell us all about this, please. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Mala Lutu. I am the staff liaison for the Teen Coalition. This year we received several awesome high school nominations, so it was a tough decision for the Teen Coalition kids to make a selection. So I'd like to introduce you to Bianca Margot. She is our volunteer Teen Coalition. She volunteers with us, and she was also a former member last year with us.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Bianca Margot. So I'm just going to describe a little bit of how the nomination process goes. Nominations rely on school administrators, counselors, teachers, and nonprofit organizations to help us find these bright stars in our community. And then after we receive our nominations, the Teen Coalition reviews and discusses them before selecting a winner. And now I'll introduce you to Jawad, who has a few words to say.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Jawad Makwad. We are here to honor the service, dedication, and leadership of those youth in our community. Today, the Teen Coalition members recognize one student from the Grossmont Unit High School District who has made a significant impact in our community. Now I'm going to honor Vanilla.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm Vandela Margot. This year's winner is Mohammed Ericat. He is a great role model, a leader, and a genuine friend to all. Now I would like to introduce Ms. Felch, the Valhalla High School counselor.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Taryn, and I'm a school counselor at Valhalla High School. Before I present this award, I would like to share a bit about this extraordinary youth we're honoring today. Where do I even begin with a student like Mohammed Ericat? It is a rare experience to meet an individual his age with as much maturity, focus, and drive. Mohammed is a role model, a leader, and a genuine friend to all, but what stands out about Mohammed is his responsibility, diligence, and significant involvement in our school and community. Here are just a few areas that deserve to be highlighted. Mohammed was accepted as a junior intern for Arab America, a role created specifically for him because of his persistence and commitment to the cause. Taking on a role originally intended for an adult, he became a part of their program called Rising Leaders and continues to volunteer for the organization today. Mohammed joined the Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans beginning in April 2021. He is a member of their youth committee and co-led a fundraiser for Afghan refugees, raising over $4,000 for the cause. In 2021, Mohammed joined the Majdal Center, an information and resource center for the Arab community. He organizes youth events and tutors young children struggling with the language barrier. Since 2021, Mohammed has been a part of UCSD's Youth Advisory Council, which he helps organize events, participated in various programs to support local communities, and partook in research about education equity. Mohammed has volunteered for Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, tasked with outreach, connecting with citizens, and operated as a co-leader to help Arab speakers with their inquiries. Mohammed's ability to find the positive when faced with adversity has made him a uniquely strong and admirable individual. He is patient, witty, compassionate, and hardworking person with a clear sense of direction and purpose. I am so proud of Mohammed's accomplishments and perseverance and can only imagine the continued growth and possibilities that await him in the years to come. Thank you to the City of El Cajon Teen Coalition for acknowledging all of his hard work and commitments and for choosing Mohammed Erkat as your Youth of the Year.
Well, welcome.
Good afternoon. I would like to thank the City of El Cajon and my counselor, Ms. Felch, for giving me this honor and recognizing my hard work. This has been an amazing opportunity. Being a part of this community has been extremely important to me, and I feel responsible to be involved. I'd also like to thank my family, who are sitting over there, for their constant support for me. With it being Arab American Heritage Month, I also feel proud to stand here not only for myself, but for all Arab youth in this country. Thank you once again, and I hope that my involvement only grows in this city.
Thank you, Mom. Were there going to be pictures and things? You guys can go ahead and go out and take your pictures. Thanks very much, everybody. All right, we're at consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? No. Staff?
No, sir.
All right, then I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent items. Please vote.
And for the record, sir, there were no speaker cards,
Thank you.
and the motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. All right, that brings us to public comment. We are now at public comment. This time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments related to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions. An item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have a speaker card for this?
We have no speaker cards, sir.
Okay. There are no written communications. We have two public hearings to consider. Item 8 is regarding the CDBG and Home One-Year Action Plan, and I'll ask staff to tell us all about this. Hi.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. Before I begin my presentation today, I would like to first introduce you to the new housing manager in the Community Development Department. His name is Jose Dorado. Jose comes to us from the city of Chula Vista, and prior to that, he was with the County of San Diego. He has over 20 years of experience with housing and community development programs and projects. I would also like to add that he is known to be the go-to regulations guru for other city admins. So we are very lucky and excited to have him on our team.
Hi, Jose. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council members and the Mayor and the City Manager. I'm happy for this opportunity to be a member of the City of El Cajon. I look forward to working with the Community Development team as well as our boss, Anthony. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and begin my presentation. So the purpose of today's public hearing is to adopt the fiscal year 22-23 one-year action plan and the Fourth Amendment to the fiscal year 19-20 one-year action plan. This public hearing is the second of two that are required for the adoption of the fiscal year 22-23 action plan. This includes both the CDBG and home allocations for projects and programs for this upcoming fiscal year. The projects and allocations were reviewed at the first public hearing, which was February 22nd of this year. The notice for that hearing was published on multiple dates prior to the hearing. Staff presented recommendations for funding to council based on estimated funding amounts expected to come in from HUD. It was an estimated allocation of $1.3 million with an additional $200,000 of prior year funding for a total of $1.5 million of CDBG funds and a total of $630,000 in home funds. City Council heard and accepted public comments and also adopted preliminary allocations for the action plan. Attachments 2 and 3 of the agenda report reflect the adjustments required in the categories of funding and the final allocations to the projects. You can also see this breakdown in the table shown in this slide. Allocations may be modified to reflect proportional decreases or increases in estimated funding as directed by council, and this is to match the actual allocation once received from HUD. We should be expecting that later this year before July 1st. A summary of the one-year action plan and notice of this public hearing were published for a minimum 30-day public review and comment period. The notices were also posted in various public locations and on the city's website. For the Fourth Amendment to the fiscal year 1920 action plan, the purpose is for reallocation of available CDBG CARES Act funds, or known as CDBG CB funds, to other eligible projects. As you know, HUD provided the city with a total of $1.8 million in CDBG CB funding, and these funds are to be utilized to prevent, prepare for, or respond to the coronavirus pandemic. A total of $240,691 is available for reallocation. This comes from the residual amount of funding remaining from both the Rental and Utility Assistance Program and the Emergency Hotel Motel Program. On December 14, 2021, staff presented City Council with options for repurposing the funds to another eligible activity. City Council deferred its decision until after its safe parking workshop that was held in January of this year. Staff is now providing new recommendations for the purpose of reallocating these remaining CDBG CB funds. Staff does recommend the following. First, we do recommend funding Home Start in the amount of $155,000. This would be for the Outreach Support Services Program. This program is designed to bolster existing outreach efforts, and this is by providing street-based outreach and hosting weekly outreach events for individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness. These services will provide connections to vital resources, and this can include housing, food, and employment. Staff further recommends funding East County Transitional Living Center in the amount of $75,691. This will go towards the emergency shelter program. This will continue to meet an increasing demand for emergency shelter for the homeless and to ensure that the shelter remains open throughout the year. This is normally a winter-only program, but these funds would ensure that it's open the rest of the year. Lastly, staff recommends funding Mama's Kitchen. This would be in the amount of $10,000 for the home-delivered meal service. This program will continue to deliver medically tailored meals to critically ill clients and their dependent children. These are clients that are considered high-risk individuals for the coronavirus. To summarize today's public hearing, staff's recommendations are first to approve the finalized CDBG and home allocations and adopt the fiscal year 22-23 one-year action plan, and also to reallocate $240,691 in available CDBG CV funds from available balance to the following programs discussed, which is outreach support services, expansion of the emergency shelter program, and the expansion of the home delivered meal service. Again, these programs are to continue to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus pandemic. The next steps in the process will be to submit the fiscal year 22-23 action plan, and this is for HUD approval once final HUD allocations are received. And these allocations should be available on or after July 1st. And also to submit the Fourth Amendment to fiscal year 19-20 one-year action plan for HUD approval as well. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Yeah. Council questions? Are any of these different than the amounts we approved at that earlier meeting before the allocation was made?
Before the December 14th public hearing, or?
Well, I know it's a two-step process, right? We make the allocations, and then we see how much we actually get in, and then so were there any changes made?
No changes were made to the preliminary allocations. Those were made February 22nd. No changes will be seen here. This is just to finalize those same allocations that you approved that day, and that would be for the fiscal year 22-23 action plan.
That's what I wanted to. Thank you. Okay, I appreciate you coming. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
All right, the public hearing is now open. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for this item?
We do, sir. We have one card from Ivan Andujar.
Hi, Evan. Welcome.
Hi. Staff, mayor, council. Just wanted to touch base, say thank you again for your consideration in the funding, the additional funding that is being spoke of today. Just wanted to give you some preliminary numbers. Last fiscal year, we were able to help with the 100,000 regular CDBG funding. We were able to help 263 men, women, and children with housing and leading them into long-term programs and or permanent housing. And currently with some of the COVID funding that we're utilizing, we just started utilizing those funds in February, the end of February. That's when the normal CDBG funding was depleted, and we have 74 people that we've assisted since mid-February. So we have additional rooms that are coming online due to the new dorms. We're filling those. We have the waiting list, and within 24 hours of that room, everything turns on, flushes, water, and it's online. We get a family in there. So the need is definitely out there. We have the waiting list, and we're going to continue with that process. So thank you for your help and your cooperation. Thank you.
Thanks. Let me see if there's any questions for you. Gary?
Hi, Ivan. Thanks for coming.
Sure.
How many children do we have out there now?
We're up to 170. 170 kids. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Ivan, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion then to close the public hearing. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, council, it's with you. Any discussion, or would someone like to make a motion?
I think I saw in the home funds $845,000 for street light improvements. Did I get that right?
The amount is correct for $845,000, but that would be coming from the CDBG allocation.
CDBG, okay, not home funds, okay. And I think the prior year was around 270 or something like that, so it's a substantial improvement.
Yes, last year, if I remember correctly, it was for $275,000.
I appreciate staff's recommendation in this area. That's over a $500, close to a $600,000 increase in allocating these funds to census areas that qualify for low-income areas. So an extra $600,000 to improve safety and street light through street lighting, I think is an outstanding recommendation. I think that's a great use of taxpayer funds to help people in these kind of areas.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? All right, I'm looking for a motion.
Individually, or
Let's ask Graham.
Why don't we go ahead and take two different motions? First, three motions. One is to finalize what has been presented based on the original preliminary allocations, and then take each resolution separately. That way, if there's a challenge to any one of them, it doesn't hold up the other one.
But then I'll make a motion to finalize allocations of CDBG and home funds as part of the fiscal year 22-23 one-year action plan.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
I'll make it another. I'll move to adopt the next resolution in order approving and adopting the fiscal year 22-23 one-year action plan in the form presented.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
And then I'll make a motion to adopt the next resolution in order amending fiscal year 19-20 one-year action plan to reallocate and make necessary changes described in the presentation.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thanks, Phil. All right, the last public hearing, item 9, is the schedule of miscellaneous fees, and I'll ask staff to tell us about this, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. Every year we go through a process of evaluating the fees that are charged to the public for services rendered by city forces. We attempt our best to come up with fees that pay for the cost of the reasonable cost estimated to provide the services. In many cases, we don't ever charge the full amount because sometimes that becomes a bit objectionable to some folks. This year's list of things has been presented to you in your agenda. Generally speaking, there's some cleanup in some instances. For example, the city clerk's office has taken over responsibility for handling Public Records Act requests, and so they are placing their charges, taking those from every other department and placing it into their list. Recreation typically has fees that are being increased, changed, or decreased in some instances. The fire department has some changes in some of their fees, as well as the community development department through its business and safety division and its planning division, in most cases to increase the cost to apply for permits or other types of approvals. All of these are in compliance with Article 13C of the California Constitution, in that they are already calculated not to exceed the reasonable costs that we believe is anticipated to be incurred in providing these services. We recommend approval of this resolution. It would take effect in essentially, the resolution takes effect immediately, but the rates would not go into effect until July 1. So these are brought to you prior to the fiscal year so that the departments can also prepare their budgets accordingly. And also the other issue about that is that building and development fees, planning fees, have to have a 60-day waiting period before they can be effective anyway. So again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Any questions? Thank you, Councilor. Okay. Public hearing is now open. Angela, do we have any speaker cards?
We do not, sir.
I'd like to make a motion then to close the public hearing.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. Any further discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We have 5 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 10 is the Homeless Services Memorandum of Understanding, and I'll ask our city manager, Mr. Mitchell, to tell us about this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. If we can get my slides up, that'd be great. For quite a while, the City Council has identified homeless issues as a priority, and in the last 2 years, as part of your council action plan, one of the goals identified as part of addressing homelessness is the development of a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, between the City of El Cajon and the other jurisdictions in East County. And we've primarily been focusing on the cities. While we started preparing this, in fact, we even had an initial draft MOU. The county expressed some interest in being involved with it, and so that did hold things up, but they're a pretty key player as part of this process, and so we thought it made sense to do that. Before I share with you the MOU itself, and I thought it'd be valuable to share some data with the council to show where we're at in terms of the state of homelessness and what the City of El Cajon has done relative to the region. So this first slide, I know a lot of data on it, but this shows the number of unsheltered homeless individuals per 1,000 residents. So we normalize the data by looking at it at a per capita basis, and we use the 1,000 resident mark as the way to show this. And this is using the 2020 point in time count. Now, the Regional Task Force on Homelessness or Homeless will have the new point in time count from 2022. That data should be released in the next 30 days. And so we'll update this. But you can see that the City of El Cajon has almost 200% more unsheltered homeless individuals than the county average. And we are almost 80% higher than the City of San Diego. As a city manager, it's infuriating to me that the majority of funds in this county go to the County of San Diego and to the City of San Diego. I share this slide with you because I think it is incumbent upon our regional partners, primarily the Regional Task Force on Homeless and the County of San Diego, to share more resources on homelessness to the City of El Cajon, because we clearly are taking on a larger burden than any other city in the county. Having said that, we are also doing more than any city in the county. This shows the number of emergency shelter beds, again, per 100,000, comparing jurisdictions across the board. And this does not include the brand new, soon to be coming on board beds that ECTLC will be adding. So our numbers will go up even more. We have 200 and almost 60% more beds than the average county jurisdiction. And we have 50% more beds on a per capita basis than the City of San Diego. So if anybody in the world says that El Cajon is not doing enough to shelter the homeless, they clearly do not have the data at their hands. And this data is why this MOU, in my mind, is so important. This will help create a framework by which we can share our resources with our neighboring jurisdictions to ensure that they also contribute to providing homeless shelters. So let me go through this, kind of what this MOU says. We worked with the cities of Lemon Grove, La Mesa, Santee, our staff, and the County of San Diego, and developed this framework. The MOU has a term of 5 years. And at the end of 5 years, we'll see how it works and if we need to modify it. It does not obligate the city to do anything, but what it says is that the city will work on identifying potential sites along with the other cities for homeless shelter space, and that will also work to find permanent or establish permanent and permanent supportive longer-term housing for those that are experiencing homelessness in our community. All projects, budgets, planning, land use entitlement, the power still rests with the City Council. We do not give up any of that authority to our other jurisdictions. But what it does, it allows the city to participate legally, and also I'll give you an example. Under the Boise ruling, if we don't have shelter space, we can't enforce certain rules and regulations. This actually not only allows us to expand the number of beds that we have at our disposal so we can use enforcement as a tool. As an example, one of our neighboring jurisdictions is currently working with the County of San Diego to add some shelter space. The city of El Cajon has almost $300,000 in some CDBG money that can be used for that shelter space. So in this scenario, under this MOU, we can enter into another agreement under the framework of the MOU, contribute our $300,000 to this other jurisdiction shelter, and in exchange, we'll get beds that we know are available to us at any given time. That allows us to have enforcement tools throughout the city as part of our carrot and stick approach. So I think this has a lot of value. It also brings the county to the table and says that they will do the same things that the cities will do, that they'll look for sites in unincorporated areas such as Lakeside and Casa de Oro and Spring Valley for not only homeless shelters but also permanent supportive housing. It also sort of doesn't require them, but it brings to bear all the massive resources they have in the wraparound services that we cannot fund, but they have specific funding for. It allows us to utilize those services if we were to set up a shelter under this MOU. It also allows the county to sort of be the leader if we were to do, let's say Santee were to build a shelter jointly with all the jurisdictions in East County, and we needed to hire a company to run it. The county could run the RFQ or RFP process. So it gives them that ability to do that and that responsibility. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that you may have about the MOU itself. We are the first one to go. I thought that we're the ones that were taking some leadership in this area. I thought it was appropriate that we be the first to go. If the council adopts this or approves this MOU tonight, I believe La Mesa and Lemon Grove will be in the next 2 weeks, in Santee in about 3 weeks from now. I'm not sure when the county has this slated. So with that, staff's here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Graham. Questions? Michelle?
Thanks, Graham, for a good report. So I went to the Regional Task Force Homeless meeting in Lemon Grove last week, and I'm really glad to hear that Lemon Grove is willing to sign on to this MOU or is looking into it. I think we have led the way in East County, and it was a very interesting meeting, and I think that the county is really listening to us and is really listening to East County. And so I'm glad that this is happening. And, please let the council know if there's anything that we can do to help, because this definitely is an issue that we've been bearing for quite some time and worked hard to accommodate everybody. But I think it is time for other cities to start sharing in on the responsibility.
Questions? Graham, do you think there's any correlation between the number of services that we're providing, because we're obviously providing a lot more services than the other jurisdictions, and the number of people that are unsheltered here in El Cajon? Are we drawing people to El Cajon to use our services?
I don't think we have any data, but I think anecdotally and logically, I think if you build it, they will come. So I think we probably do attract folks. I think that we also, if you look at some Sandag data, we have more apartments, a heavier apartment to single family housing ratio than any other jurisdiction. We also have the most affordable housing in the county of San Diego. I think that probably drives some of our homeless numbers.
Because people do tend to be homeless where they were last housed, right?
Correct. I mean, I hear all the time, someone will call my office and go, I went to Coronado and I saw no homeless. Clearly, their police chief is doing something where Chief Moulton's doing nothing, right? But people don't live in a $2.3 million home and go homeless the next day, right? They will sell their home or lose their home, and they will downgrade to somewhere else, and eventually they go to where there's very affordable housing, and we happen to have very affordable housing. It's one of the reasons why I think the council's on the right page of looking at high quality development, especially in the Valley floor, because I think that's how we raise our overall quality of life, including dealing with the homeless issue.
I appreciate that. Steve?
Is there a web page that we have that kind of summarizes all of our efforts? And, you know, I'm stunned at how many millions of dollars are spent at the county and the city of San Diego, and we seem to get people back home for $363. We seem to get somebody into an apartment for $4,000, you know, first, last, and this, and we able to, for pennies on the dollar compared to there. Do we have a page that kind of summarizes how efficient our programs are?
We do. We actually have a website. It's actually linked to the city manager's page. But we actually, in fact, I'm meeting with our interns tomorrow. They're looking at it fresh from a marketing perspective. Right now, I think it's very governmental. And I think it's geared for those that are experiencing homelessness. And I think we're going to shift it to really beat our chest and show what amazing work we have done as a city in this area. So it is being revamped. One of the challenges that we have, Mr. Goebel, though, is that I reached out to the Regional Task Force on Homeless to understand, of all the millions of dollars they get every year, where is that money going by jurisdiction? And they can't tell you that. It's too convoluted. There's just so many pieces of the puzzle. But that would be, for me, again, as a city manager, as a policy recommender to the council, useful information that we don't have access to.
You know, one point of view could be a web page. The unintended consequences might be, well, now people come to El Cajon because we realize how good we are and efficient we are. I don't think that's the audience of the web page. I don't think you need to worry about that.
I agree with that. I think it's really, we're talking to those that we're trying to, well, I think you and I have talked about this, right?
Yes, I think it's really to become a resource center.
Correct.
To show what can be done, how efficiently it can be done. The emergency cabins out at Meridian got picked up by Channel 7 in Los Angeles. It got picked up by Newsweek magazine. It got picked up by a news station in Minnesota. And because the things that our partners are doing in the community are working. And if we have a page that is that markets these are the successes, then we don't have to carry the whole load. Other people could say, let's do what they did.
And in that case, I mean, the city council did the bare minimal thing that resulted in the facilitation of those cabins, right? You put no money into it. You have no ownership in it. You just modified some zoning temporarily, and look what happened, right? And that's a great example. There are some really low-hanging fruits that the majority of jurisdictions are not taking advantage of that I think this city council has, and I think the website should be a place to promote that.
Well, branching off on the cabins just for a second, because it was a council-initiated item on the zoning change, it didn't cost the applicant $2,500 for the application fee. The citizens of El Cajon absorbed that. I think everybody in El Cajon would say, great use of money. Not only that, staff was brilliant enough to say, well, not only this one site, but 12 other sites in the city qualify as well, pre-approved for these kind of things. And that's what I think this particular tool is trying to say is you could do these 6 little cabins in villages all over the county so that you don't have to have a 200-person tent everywhere you go.
Good point.
All right. Any other thoughts? Okay, that sounds good. Angela, do we receive any comments on this item?
We have no comments, sir.
All right. Any further discussion, or someone like to proceed with the motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right, item 11 is a new classification, specification, and salary setting, and I'll ask staff to tell us about this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Chelsea Pullen, Human Resources Analyst. We are here before you to introduce the proposed Marketing and Engagement Manager position classification specification and to receive approval from Council. As part of City Council's direction to increase branding, marketing, and engagement for the city and the community, staff was tasked with researching and developing a marketing and engagement manager classification in order to establish a new position. The proposed new classification will develop, implement, and manage audience-centric marketing strategic plans to promote the image of the city to the citizens, business community, media industry, and the region, and will take the city's image to the next level. What is unique about the proposed classification is that it's beyond the typical public information government job scope. After conducting a job analysis and also speaking with marketing and branding experts in both the private and public sectors, staff is proposing a classification that will focus on marketing, social media management, project budgeting, graphic design, and overall brand management of the city. In addition, these marketing and branding experts provided insight for the current industry market, which allowed the city to propose a comparable salary that will allow the city to attract industry leaders. At this time, staff is here to request approval of the proposed classification and salary setting. This concludes staff's presentation. Staff is here to answer any questions that you may have, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions, Council?
Chelsea, nice report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Often, this kind of position needs the support of a graphic designer. Do you have those resources?
So we have graphic design built into the class spec.
Okay, great.
So we're hoping to get someone that has that.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Angela, any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards, sir.
All right, then it's up to Council. Sounds like there's not much question here.
I just want to add a little color to this. I think this is a fantastic idea. Just in our previous agenda item, we're doing such great things. And part of that is telling the story of these great things that we're doing so we can be that. We're doing the beta test for all of these homeless programs. We're a model for, I think, California, really, with the accomplishment that ECTLC has done. What Ivan just said, $100,000 for 263 individuals, that's $380 per person. I mean, if we could have some kind of social media management to create that narrative and that story to show the public and really, like Steve said, Newsweek, the nation, what we're doing is going to pay dividends down the road. So I think this is a fantastic move. Move to approve.
Second.
Steve, did you make a comment?
I do. I think this is an excellent upgrade by city staff and its recommendation. This is a case of you get what you pay for. And it may seem like a generous thing, but this is very important to the city. And ultimately, this isn't a cost. This is an investment in the city's economic development, so to speak. And it's just an outstanding recommendation.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. So our next item is a legislative update, and I'd like to ask our Assistant City Manager, Vince DiMaggio, to introduce this item. And as much as I love you, Vince, I'm always afraid of these particular agenda items.
I got to start bringing some good things like
yeah,
you guys
please.
have been. I don't have any good things right now. So the list is expanded, as you've seen. It's now up to, I think, 4 pages in your council materials. I want to start with page 2. I'm not going to go through all of them. A lot of them have not moved into committee yet. A lot of them don't have hearings. They're just there. And there are 2,000 plus active bills right now, so it's kind of hard for myself, representatives of the League of California Cities, and others that I pay attention to make sure that I'm capturing all of it, because a lot of them are duplicates. A lot of them kind of companion off the others as far as it affects us. So it's kind of it's an ongoing, almost daily thing to try and update the most important, the most potentially impactful to our business. So on page 2, I just want to make mention of one we talked about last time, SB 1369, the one that allows commercial and industrial buildings with less than 25% capacity to be converted by right into a housing project. This is opposed by the League of California Cities. As I mentioned, it's in the Senate. Its first hearing at committee was canceled by the author, which is usually indicative of major changes coming to the legislation. There are all kinds of problems with that. I think it's common sense. We can figure out what those problems are. But interestingly enough, it kind of spun off in the other house, Assembly Bill 2011, which I went over just today, thanks to the Community Development Director, Tony Shute, who brought this to my attention. This allows housing developments in the same type, commercial or industrial areas, by right, as long as 100% are affordable and as long as all of the construction was done with prevailing wage. Now, I did real estate development for 10 years. You can't do that. So they can pass this, and I don't see it impacting anything. I don't see anybody doing anything with that. You simply can't pay prevailing wage for a housing project that's 100% affordable. The math doesn't work. So it's a humorous side note to this whole thing. I'll move on to page 3, where some of the newer ones have come on. SB 852 is another interesting one. It could be good, actually. It provides for the creation of tax increment financing districts, but it does so for just projects. And the reason why that's interesting is, in order to have a TIF district, you have to have an area. And this only talks about individual projects. So there needs to be some tweaking of this, in my opinion, because they're talking about projects that assist climate change impacts, which, again, could be a good thing as well, depending upon what the projects are and what their impacts are. But in order to create a district for tax increment financing, you need an area that has multiple projects, an area that is looking to accomplish the same thing. So I'm not quite sure what kind of changes they're planning to make. Again, it's in the Senate. No hearings have been scheduled, nothing in committee yet, so it's probably got a long way to go. One of real concern, the next one is SB 932. This does a lot of different things to places like SANDAG, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations. The bill would require cities to update or develop a balanced multimodal transportation network plan, including bicycle and pedestrian plans, traffic calming plans, and include that in the city's general plan. The bill also, interestingly enough, this is kind of the carrot and stick approach to the whole thing. The bill also allows someone injured within the right-of-way of a city by a motor vehicle to have a cause of action against the city that didn't have these provisions in place. So it's their way of saying, I'm going to twist your arm and this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm going to make you liable for any accidents that happen if you didn't have these plans in place. So I thought that was very, very interesting. This is in Senate committee at the moment. AB 1737 creates a framework. This is going to impact a little bit our Parks and Recreations Department if it moves forward. It provides for background checks for employees of children's camps and unannounced inspections by state officials of those camps. So again, it's in committee, likely to move forward by what we're hearing, and would impact the way we conduct, our camp operations. This is very interesting. This is another one that's very interesting and kind of takes off from the city manager's report just in the couple of prior issues ago. AB 2631. This bill would provide that a city is liable for injury related to the effects of a city's homeless policies on another city or county. So what that means is, let's take an example that we all know about, the North Magnolia homeless encampment. Because of the county's policies of allowing that encampment there, we theoretically could demonstrate a cause of action, an injury to our city and our businesses, and actually have a cause of action against the county on something like this. so too could another city that is adjacent to us that believes that our policies are injuring them in some way or another. Basically, this allows cities to sue each other, or counties to sue cities, and cities to sue counties over the homeless issue. So it really just kind of ramps up the entire argument, really, in terms of who's doing what correctly and who's not doing what correctly. The last one I want to cover is the one that really has the impact on the SANDAG and the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I said it was the last one. It's actually this one. It's AB 2237. It does quite a lot of things. It aligns transportation funding to sustainability performance. So the funding that we get through SANDAG that gets from the state and federal government, the granting of that funding is going to be tied to how we comply with the state's definition of sustainability and sustainable performance. It focuses the funding on VMT reducing projects. So, for example, any capacity increasing or lane widening projects that we would need to accommodate more traffic, that would not qualify under this because that's not a VMT reducing project. So it's also prohibits the Regional Transportation Agency from funding projects that are determined to be inconsistent with its most recently prepared sustainable community strategy or the state's climate goals. So again, where I see this going is a state overall mandate for a climate action plan, for instance, which isn't mandated, and we have an aspirational one. We don't have one that's actually adopted, but our aspirational one. But this could then create an overarching, you have to adopt a climate action plan or else you're not going to be given any state transportation funds. And that will be a mandate that comes down on SANDAG, and then SANDAG will say that to us. So this is an important piece of legislation. It's in committee, but these are ones that we need to watch very, very carefully. Again, I've said this before. The league just doesn't have the kind of authority or power that it had, 30 years ago. When what the league said, when the league opposed a bill, that bill didn't go anywhere. And when I first started my career, Graham started his career, we knew that the league wielded quite a bit of power. When they said this is not good for the cities, it just didn't go anywhere. And now that is not the case. This is an example of where you have one party in total and complete control with no debate, no listening to what's reasonable, and no understanding of what it actually means to manage cities and manage transportation and manage homeless and manage land use. They are really looking to take away as much discretionary authority from each and every city as possible. And so it continues to be discouraging, unfortunately. And like I said, I'm sorry I have to bring down the mood on everything with these things when you had such a good meeting and some of these other items that came through. But I'll continue to watch them, and I will continue to report back, and I'll suggest the writing of letters when the time is appropriate on some of these that are of particular concern to you.
Questions? Yeah, so I have a question about the last one, AB 2237.
Right.
So, say the 125 project. Mm-hmm. Would this kind of kill that? I mean, and the Bradley interchange and anything that would be repairing or widening or fixing a freeway or a road.
Yeah, it specifically says that the focus of metropolitan planning organization plans will be on funding VMT reducing projects.
Even for projects that have already been approved?
Now that's different. I don't know that. I don't know if projects that are already funded and approved and in process, I think those will probably still go. But we have a lot of other issues around this county that affect us, 52 being one of them. The 125 is one of those projects that's already kind of moving forward. The 52 has been a project that's been on the drawing board but has no funding. Yeah. So that could be impacted.
Well, I think we should write a letter of opposition to this. Any objection amongst the council? Not that I'm sure the governor's going to be all upset that he got a letter from us, but we'll do it anyway, okay? Yeah.
Will do.
Do you need a motion for that, or do you...
I think direction is sufficient.
Okay. That sounds great. Thanks for the update, Vince. It's not your fault. All right. Item 13 is the 2022 Active Transportation Plan, and I'd like to ask staff to introduce this item. Mario?
Good afternoon.
Need some help, Mario?
Yeah.
Graham, while they're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and go on to commission activities reports.
Yes, great idea.
My activities report is as reported. Gary?
As reported.
Steve?
As reported.
Phil?
As reported.
And Michelle.
I just have one addition. I attended the regional task force meeting with Lemon Grove on the homeless, otherwise as reported.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Ready to go.
Great.
Sorry about that. All right. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm Mario Sanchez, Public Works Department. I'm going to give an introduction on this item. It's in 2019, the city received a Sandag Smart Growth Grant and hired our consultant, Shen Ryan Associates, CRA, which from our on-call consultant list to assist us with this El Cajon Active Transportation Plan. So it's been in the works for over 3 years. And the goal of the plan is to make walking and bicycling safer and encourage more transportation choices here in the city. The city of El Cajon is one of the few remaining cities that doesn't have a comprehensive active transportation plan on file. So having an ATP will better leverage the city to obtain future funding on these type of projects. And with that, I'll turn over the presentation to Mr. Andrew Prescott. He's with CRA, and I'll turn that over to him.
Hello, Andrew. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Council members, thank you, Mario. Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Prescott with CR Associates. We'll be walking through this presentation today. So we'll give a quick background on the overall project, the need for it, the purpose of an active transportation plan. We'll outline the components of it and what went into it, including the community engagement process, as well as some of our needs analysis findings and the overall recommendations. So a little legislative background. Assembly Bill 1358, the Complete Streets Act, was adopted in 2008, and that requires that public agencies plan for a balanced multimodal transportation network that meets the needs of all users. And you can read the definition there, but key to our project is pedestrians, bicyclists, children, people with disabilities, seniors. Mario outlined the funding. The city was awarded a SANDAG Active Transportation Planning Grant, and the intention, again, is to prepare a sidewalk or pedestrian master plan, as well as an update to the city's 2011 bicycle master plan. And we also want to build on the previous efforts that the city has done, which include the Systemic Safety Analysis Report Program, or SSARP, which is a citywide safety study of all traffic modes or all transportation modes, as well as the Transit District Specific Plan, and again, that 2011 Bicycle Master Plan. So build on those recommendations. And the purpose of the Active Transportation Plan itself is we want to examine the existing issues and opportunities. So what's out there on the ground today? What's not out there? Where can we improve? We want to build an understanding of the community's priorities and also, again, those previous efforts, what are going on. We want to develop and also prioritize recommendations for bicycles and pedestrians, and this plan will really help guide those investments in the future. The document really does help the city position itself to be grant competitive, so having recommendations outlined, a community engagement process, and overall city support for the recommendations really helps the city be competitive for a variety of grant funding sources. And lastly, I'll just point out that adopting this document does not commit any city funding. This is simply a planning document, so outlines where we would like to be, but it does not commit any further money. This flow chart outlines our overall planning process. At the left side, we started with some research and data collection, so gathering land use data, infrastructure data, collision history, demographic information. We fed all that into an existing conditions report, which touched on the demand, the quality, the safety, and the connectivity for bicycle and pedestrians. Using those findings, as well as the community outreach process, we developed recommendations, which consist of different network or infrastructure recommendations, as well as goals and policies. We'll touch on those a bit later. Through our engagement process and outreach to different city staff departments, those recommendations were refined, and what we came to our final set of recommendations. And once we had those, we prioritized them, developed conceptual designs, identified funding sources, and some preliminary cost estimates for high priority projects. Then all those steps are compiled into what we're calling the Active Transportation Plan. As Mario said, the project was funded in 2019, so we kicked off in early 2020, and unfortunately we had to adapt to COVID-19 and the circumstances around that. So our community engagement pivoted to a largely virtual presence. We had a project website, elcajonatp.com. We hosted project surveys. We had a project working group and conducted one-on-one interviews with various community organizations and community members. On the right, you see a list of some of those community partners that participated in the working group, as well as the one-on-one interviews. I'd like to take a minute to recognize them, because definitely under this COVID-19 time, their support and willingness to engage their constituents on our behalf was very beneficial. So the El Cajon Collaborative, Rady's Children's Hospital, who's working on several Safe Roads to School programs with the city, San Diego County Bicycle Coalition, Bike Buddies Cycling Club, the International Rescue Committee, Police Department, MTS, SANDAG, Caltrans, the county, and adjacent city of Santee, so we can ensure connectivity across jurisdictional boundaries. And that needs analysis that we conducted, and those 4 components I stated in the existing conditions analysis, again, this kind of outlines some of those analyses efforts and the data pieces that went into those. So that commute data, looking at where there's higher propensities for walking or biking trips, looking at where the existing sidewalk facilities are, where there's missing or existing curb ramps, or where they could be upgraded to meet ADA standards, the existing bicycle facilities. For the quality, we had 2 different metrics to evaluate how the actual environment is in relation to the adjacent roadways, such as the posted speed limit or number of travel lanes, or the type of intersection that pedestrians are crossing, and then a safety component reviewing 5 years of pedestrian and bicycle collision data. And once we had all that information, we formulated our recommendations. It can broadly fall into these kind of 3 categories. So we did have a set of goals, objectives, policies, and performance measures. So things that we want to strive to achieve, how we're going to get there, and how are we going to track to see what the differences are from implementing a new facility, for example. Then our infrastructure components include a sidewalk infill program, so where do we want to implement new sidewalks, intersection crossing improvements to increase pedestrian safety, and a bicycle network. Lastly, the recommendations consist of a series of supporting programs for the city to consider, falling under categories such as education, enforcement, evaluation, and encouragement. For the remainder of this presentation, we'll just focus on those infrastructure pieces, but again, feel free to review those other recommendations in the plan. So our sidewalk infill process, we did a review of every public city street, both sides of the street, and identified where there are existing or missing sidewalks in the city. Once we had those, we further categorized them as either no fronting land uses, so this could be a segment of the street adjacent to a freeway, for example, where it wouldn't really serve any actual uses, so might not need a sidewalk. Undeveloped parcels, so locations that a sidewalk could likely be implemented by a future development project. And then developments that were planned without sidewalks. These could be smaller kind of master plan communities, for example. Any remaining missing sidewalks that we identified fall under that red category, the missing sidewalk, and these are where efforts should be focused in terms of implementation. Once we had those, we grouped them for the purposes of prioritizing and creating smaller projects and help identify which of these areas may have the greatest need. Additionally, I spoke about we had intersection crossing enhancements recommended. We had a total of 9 locations, and these were identified by primarily looking at the previous collision history. So any location that had 3 or more pedestrian collisions in a 5-year period, or any location that had multiple severe or fatal pedestrian-involved collisions. There are some additional locations not listed in these 9, and those were excluded because the city is already either implemented or is in the process of implementing improvements. Examples of those could be Avocado and Main Street, South 2nd and Main Street, 2nd Hamishaw and Main Street. So where there's already, again, activities going on to improve safety at those locations. Step through a few of the different intersection treatments that were recommended. High visibility crosswalks to maximize driver visibility of pedestrians. Advanced stop bars, which separate the stopped vehicle from the crosswalk, help improve their visibility of the pedestrians and give a little extra space there. Curb extensions to help shorten the crossing distance, and pedestrian signage to help make drivers more aware, to anticipate and remind them to yield to crossing pedestrians when they're turning. As well as a couple operational improvements for pedestrians. Lead pedestrian intervals, the image at the top there, so when a pedestrian pushes that cross button, they could get a 3 to 5 second head start out into the intersection before a driver is given that green light. As well as a protected left turning phase, so that gives pedestrians that clear walk and ensures that the drivers have a red left turn arrow instead of that green ball that encourages them just to yield. So again, maximizing that safety for pedestrians and helping to eliminate conflicts is the idea there. And then stepping into our bicycle network, there's 4 recognized classifications or bicycle facility types. We'll step through each one with a graphic here shortly and a quick description. That's what our network will be comprised of. And then additional infrastructure recommendations that include green conflict paint to support, again, kind of emphasizing where drivers and bicyclists might be crossing over, such as the presence of a right turn only lane where a driver would have to cross over that bike lane to get into there. That's an example of a location where you might want to use some green conflict paint. So we outlined in the document some potential applications for that. And then late last year, Assembly Bill 43 was adopted, and that makes it much easier for jurisdictions to reduce their posted speed limits. Previously, it was speed limits had to be set on the 85th percentile rule, so you conducted a speed survey. Whatever the 85th percentile is what your new speed has to be. So you're kind of rewarding faster drivers, which made it more difficult to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. This new Assembly bill will make it much easier. Jurisdictions can base speed limits on things like pedestrian and bicycle collision history, for example, commercial districts, school areas, things like that. So again, a lot more flexibility with that. So walking through those 4 bicycle facility classifications, Class 1 bike path, it's a completely separated facility, 8 to 10 feet in width, with a 2-foot buffer on either side. Image at the right is that bike path right up by the college. Class 2 bike lane, 6-foot roughly striped area, generally on the far shoulder of the roadway. Most people are familiar with these, see them on like Chase or Washington, for example. And a Class 3 bike route. These are typically applied on lower volume, lower speed roadways. This is a shared environment, so not a dedicated facility for cyclists. You see the little chevron with the arrow marking and the bicycle symbol called a sharrow. That helps remind drivers to anticipate cyclists, also designates some positioning for cyclists in the roadway. Again, these are ideally placed on lower speed, lower volume roadways, or to fill gaps where another facility may not fit. And then lastly, a bit more of a recent facility type gaining more prevalence is a Class 4 cycle track or protected bikeway or a separated bikeway. These are similar to a bike lane, but on the outside of the bike lane, you have some sort of a physical barrier separating the cyclists from the vehicular traffic. Here we have pictured on Balboa Avenue in the city of San Diego, and that's kind of those flex posts used. Other locations might use rolled curbs or planters for some landscaping and stormwater catchment opportunities. Different treatments can be used, but as well as on-street parking. So it just kind of depends on the location and what's most pleasing aesthetically and cost-effective. And this is our resulting bicycle network, largely comprised of those Class 2 bike lanes. I'll point out a few of those cycle tracks that we do have planned. So Fletcher Parkway, west of Ballantyne Street. We saw a lot of bicycle-involved collisions on this stretch, and these were some of the more severe and fatal bicycle collisions as well. So definitely some enhanced protection we felt was warranted there, as well as on Johnson Avenue, and Marshall leading to the transit center. There's a Class 1 multi-use path along Johnson Avenue and another cycle track along Main Street, and these are consistent with the Transit District specific plan as well. Then in terms of implementation, we conducted a prioritization process that included both demand and safety considerations, so evaluating each individual recommendation or recommended bicycle or a sidewalk infill grouping based on what we think the demand is for it in that area, the previous collision history, and other components such as the Cal Enviro score, which is kind of shows grant competitiveness for it. So using that, we ranked in order the recommendations, and for the top 10 bicycle and sidewalk infill projects, we created project sheets that include conceptual designs, potential cost estimates, and brief narratives. And we also identified funding sources, so we're hoping these can all help with being more grant competitive in the future. And then lastly, a notice of exemption being prepared for the document just as environmental documentation to accompany it. The active transportation plan itself is statutorily exempt from CEQA. And then finally, the recommendation today is that the City Council adopts the resolution approving the 2022 El Cajon Active Transportation Plan. And with that, open it up to any questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Questions? Steve?
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and it answered a lot of my questions that I had from an email that I received from one of the groups involved. So my question is, this sounds great, and I understand that for a lot of older residents, it's going to be a big change. You know, we're being told, you know, we've got to get out of our cars, we've got to do more walking, we've got to ride more bikes, we've got to take public transportation, and that's really hard. Speaking as a senior, it's very difficult to make those changes sometimes. I understand that they're needed in order for us to mitigate a lot of the climate issues, pollution, and the like. But being out in East County, it's kind of difficult when you work in other parts of the county to give up that car. So we're going to have to live with cars. And I think that we can do this together. My question is, what are the steps that you're going to take for education? Because the city can be responsible for, you know, sidewalks and bike lanes and everything else that needs to be done as far as the city streets go and the city structure. But what is the plan for educating the public, educating those who will be pedestrians and bicyclists? Because we can do all that we can, reduce speeds, the curb bump outs, lighting, all of that. But if drivers are not going to pay attention, what's the point? You know, we've got to educate the public. We have to educate pedestrians. Don't jaywalk. Go to the corner. You know, that's where I have noticed that a lot of the accidents happen is they're jaywalking. They're not even using the crosswalks. They're jaywalking, and it's really difficult. I live on the north end of Mollison, right by Bradley, and constantly, you know, and that is county, I understand that, but in early mornings and late at night or even at the dusk time, people jaywalk across the street and you can't see them unless they just happen to have that reflective stripe on their tennis shoe or their backpack or their jacket, and all of a sudden now that someone is reflective. So I think we need to really do a good education program, educating kids to do the right thing and wear reflective gear if you're going to ride at night. There's that education. Education about speeders. You know, we have a problem with speeders. We can reduce the traffic. We've reduced the speeds on several streets: Washington, Chase, Mollison, Ballantyne, and alike. We can do all of that as a city, but if the drivers aren't going to pay attention, then what's the point? You know what I'm saying? It's like it's constantly we're trying to educate people. On the separated bikeway, how I believe it's the 56 that has that bike lane. I don't travel it very often, once in every few years. I used to work up in that area, so I would have to go to Torrey Pines and go down the 56. But I mean, there's stories of cars just plowing through the fence. So a city can do all of those things, but if the drivers are not paying attention, or if the drivers aren't going to slow down, if they're not going to share the road, so to speak, how do we mitigate that? You know, I mean, how is that going to be addressed? And I think that all comes down to the education. Educating in high schools, slow down, watch for these. And we have a lot of newcomers in El Cajon that are learn to drive. if they learn to drive here, of course, they're going to learn the laws and how things go here. If maybe they didn't learn to drive here, but they've gotten their license here now, they may not have the same awareness of pedestrians and bicyclists that we may have here. So how is that going to be addressed? So I guess my question is the education component on this. If we're going to adopt this plan and really, go full bore on adopting all the resolutions, or the recommendations, I should say, all the recommendations that all the groups wanted through data, surveys, and the like, I really think that we need to have education as a big component of that, because we can do all of that, but if the drivers, and bicyclists as well, bicyclists that don't have reflective gear on them, that don't ride properly, they're riding all over the street, unless we educate them and get a good campaign on that, I think it's just going to be another waste almost. Look what happened in Mira Mesa when they made those bike lanes and they had one street and they had to turn around and change it over on Gold Coast or something like that. I may have that wrong, but I rode my bike in the 80s. I didn't have a car, but it was only 50,000 people here, and I could ride across the whole entire city on a bicycle. And yeah, there were some issues, but it wasn't like it is now. I wouldn't ride now. I don't trust myself in riding, getting out there on my grandma bike. But I think that I hear what people want, and I hear what is being recommended, but I also want to make sure that, everything works together, and we're not just putting out money, or we're not, putting all this effort into something that's not going to be minded by the people who are going to be on the road.
Yeah, certainly, Deputy Mayor, your comment is well received. I feel like you looked at our existing conditions report and must have reviewed our collision analysis, because the number one factor for pedestrian collisions was actually, I take that back. The second leading cause for pedestrian collisions was pedestrians crossing outside of the crosswalk, so not where they should be. For bicyclists, the leading collision cause was bicyclists riding against traffic, so going the wrong way. So how do we solve that? Infrastructure is one thing. This outlines infrastructure recommendations, but to your point, education, and that's certainly outlined. A series of programs to be considered are outlined throughout this document. Again, this doesn't commit any money to any program or any infrastructure at this time, so these are recommended programs that the city could pursue. We do have Safe Routes to School, recommend continuing that program. Great way to reach a lot of people, a lot of local residents that are growing up in the city, and instilling in them, at that young age, proper traffic safety behaviors that while they might be learning it as a pedestrian or bicyclist, they'll remember that moving forward when they become drivers, we hope. Additionally, we outlined some different programs that are offered through different organizations, including San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. They offer free courses that can be conducted at employment centers. So if you have a large business and a few bicycle commuters, they'll come out and teach class on what's proper, how to share the road properly, or more introductory level courses are also an option. So definitely we have some educational recommendations in there. I think we have a changeable message signing, so you see those can move around the city at different times to remind of, more pressing issues as different travel demands. As travel demands shift, or if a new facility gets implemented, how to roll that out, if ensuring that people, so that what you heard up in Mira Mesa. Side note, we did not recommend any advisory bicycle lanes in this document.
Good.
Where that could be a challenge for people, so bringing additional attention to that through some changeable message signs. So education is a critical component, and definitely something that we outlined in this.
And to your point, it's educating the young definitely is a great start. Things that I learned as a kid, don't pollute, don't litter, anything, still holds true today. I think that we have a hard time with teens and young adult speeders, and that's a segment of the population that may not get that education in their school or their college, but to kind of keep in mind when you set up these educational programs, how can we get that information out to that segment of the population who already speeds, who already does donuts and cul-de-sacs, who are already is a challenge to police department and to the sheriff's department in more other areas. That's going to be your challenge, is how to educate them, because I think those might be your biggest challenge on sharing the road with bicyclists. Those speeders who just cannot get the foot off the gas pedal. And, you know, they own the road, and that's the attitude. We all need to do our part. I agree that we all need to do our part. We all need to educate our own kids and grandkids. But I think that I just put that as a challenge to you guys, that, you know, that is going to be your challenge, is how you're going to educate them.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks.
Questions?
So I'm glad to see there's 37 miles of bike improvements or new bikeways, 75 miles of sidewalks. Probably the public would want to know, when's it going to happen in my area? I'll direct it to the city manager, and you can pivot wherever you want. Is there a prioritization that is available or public yet?
Well, one of the graphs that was showed sort of chunked different sidewalk projects. Whether those are priorities or not, this just establishes the plan. Then it's a matter of marrying this plan with the CIP.
Okay.
We typically like to spread the improvements around the city, and we kind of go from segment to segment. So we wouldn't hit, say, Fletcher Hills for the next 5 years and then another area in the next 5 years. We'd spread that around, but it'd be premature to tell the public when this would happen.
Okay. I heard he had a spreadsheet and projects, and I thought, oh, we've already got a list of.
And I could add.
That will help guide us in the CIP, but yeah, we don't have. You're not approving that tonight.
Okay, sounds good. My next question is, you know what I don't see on the bike lanes is, and I agree with Councilwoman Mitchell, that it's great to be greener, sustainable, healthier, but we also got to be safer. And downtown San Diego, I see a bike lane along the curb, and then a parking lane, and then a traffic lane. That seems to be really safe for a bicyclist because there's a physical barrier between them and a car. I can see if you're riding a bike in a bike lane next to a parked car, that number one, you know, we saw this at driver's ed, you got to be aware for a car door opening up, and then bam, there goes the bicyclist. Is that an option? A bike lane by the curb and then a car lane and the traffic lane, just reversing the order?
Yes, certainly. So that's a Class 4 cycle track that you're referring to that's in downtown San Diego. So they have in the buffer area that we're showing here on either the conceptual design or the graphic on the image on the right, in lieu of having those bollards, you could have on-street parking there. The locations, though, that we're recommending, like Fletcher Parkway, for example, doesn't have existing on-street parking, not really a need for on-street parking. So I think when it comes also to the separation as to what material you're going to use if it's on-street parking, that also comes to the available curb-to-curb width. We developed this plan with the objective to not touch the curbs. As soon as we start touching curbs and moving them, the cost just goes up exponentially due to utilities, among a dozen other things. So, it really comes down to the available width. If you're doing a plastic bollard like this, for example, a 3-foot width is sufficient, or is kind of the minimum size. But if we go up to on-street parking, now we're talking at like a 7-8 foot minimum. So at the locations that we ended up recommending, I don't think that there's that much space available. In a downtown setting, also, it's a little different, I think, in terms of their on-street parking utilization. Here on Main Street, though, very slow, that stretch through the downtown area. It's a slower moving roadway where the angled parking and the Class 3 bike route might be appropriate. But certainly in other locations, if we wanted to retain on-street parking and perhaps repurpose the travel lane, then that could be something that could be explored further if you wanted to upgrade some of the planned Class 2s or existing Class 2s.
I think that's a good option to consider where it's appropriate, because it's about safety. If we have to create these things either by state law or we want to because we want to be a better community, ultimately this is about safety. And it depends on the street. I hear what you're saying, but I hope we do maintain that openness to take advantage of that opportunity.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you. So I have a handful of questions, so bear with me. First one, with the sidewalk slide, they're multicolored. Do the colors mean anything, or is that just a method to identify different areas?
Yeah, the latter.
And then with these areas, these are all 100% of our roads in El Cajon that currently do not have sidewalks?
So that would be, this shows everywhere that does not have it along public roadways. And then from this, we categorized into those 4 groupings. So no fronting land use. Looking at that piece just west of First Street, like this one, for example, where the cursor is at.
Yep.
Adjacent to the freeway, there's nothing on either side.
No need for it.
No need for a sidewalk there. So we called that no fronting land use.
Okay.
Some other areas where there's undeveloped parcels, such as along West Main Street here.
Yep.
Rather than potentially using city CIP funding or pursuing grant funding, let's hold that and have whoever's going to develop that be on the hook to fund that.
Great.
Other locations where there's a development without a sidewalk, these are typically very small. Might be a series of condos or townhouses, very like a cul-de-sac street, for example, just south of Broadway, east of Ballantyne, for example. Implementing a sidewalk there would likely require acquiring private property. It's a very slow street that was planned without a sidewalk. We feel that that's probably sufficient as it is today. Anything that did not fall into those buckets are what we called the missing sidewalk, and that's what we moved forward. And we grouped together based on proximity.
Okay.
And trying to create, somewhat sizable projects that these projects might not advance as they are today. We might take smaller sections of them. This was to give us kind of a baseline for a prioritization process. And as your city manager said, though, that's kind of some guidelines at the starting point. I'd say what funding sources get used, what grants get pursued, that will ultimately dictate priority, because some grants can only be used in a CDBG designated area, or if we go for HSIP, it might be on collision history. So that'll kind of vary down the road as well.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. To add some color, I live on the valley floor, and in my eyes, it seems as though the areas on the valley floor without sidewalks would be one of the higher priorities because of the pedestrian collisions with vehicles that we have. On South 2nd, the red one, I mean, we have people walking in the street, because there's no sidewalk there. So this is kind of where I would get into a healthy competition with my council members and say I would advocate for sidewalk safety first. It seems like that's a huge priority. The other aspect of this is on the valley floor, there's a lot of apartments, and there's not enough parking for apartments for the people living in those apartments, so they have to park on the street. And so I would not be in favor of sacrificing parking spots for a bike lane, for a Class 4, if that makes sense, or a transportation lane. So we did a road diet all the way at the end of South Magnolia recently, and instead of 4 lanes of traffic, we did 2 lanes of traffic with a bike lane and parking. And I walked that, and I talked to my neighbors, and they said they love it because we increased the ability for them to park on the street. There's a bike lane there. It slowed traffic down. It wasn't necessary. In that situation, that's great. But sacrificing parking for a bike lane for our residents who are in apartments is just going to make it tremendously difficult for them existing. And a lot of the times, people in apartments, their car is their biggest asset. So they want to be able to have parking for that. So something I think we need to consider when discussing this. Where's my other questions? The curb extensions at the intersections. Would that create more traffic? Are we stopping a lane of traffic to go through the intersection? Or would that just be low-hanging fruit where it's appropriate?
Yeah, kind of the low-hanging fruit. It definitely wouldn't remove a striped travel lane.
Okay.
It might limit what we call a de facto right turn lane. When you have enough space to squeeze through
Sure.
next to that might prevent them. But overall, intersection operations,
Cool.
in terms of the vehicle throughput, overall, it's not going to change.
Okay, I like that idea. I love the LPI. I love the protected turn lane. I love the idea of green paint. To Councilmember Mitchell's point, when you see something different on the road, it's just going to grab your attention as a driver. And so green paint is going to be something different to the education piece. It's just going to make drivers more aware of what's happening. So I think that's good. And as long as we can kind of get some media and some kind of education approach, I think that's a great plan. And then on the bike lane, it looks like the only class 4 we have is going up Fletcher, that long road up the hill, right? The purple dots going up Fletcher. And then East Main going to the 8. It's kind of, I think didn't we discuss this area before where it's kind of a dead area? It's the SDG&E building or something like that, and it's a school, Literacy First around there. Is that the area that we're referring to? Maybe West Main. Okay, West Main. Okay. That seems fine. It looks like we're just kind of connecting. Most of the proposed bike lanes, we're kind of just connecting existing infrastructure for bike lanes. But like I said, if you're looking for feedback or questions, I think sidewalks would be my number 1 priority. And we have so many pedestrians on the valley floor. Every day of the week, I would argue that we have more pedestrians on the valley floor than we do in any other part of the city. So I would think that because of the heavy use of sidewalks, the intersections, the sidewalk, really completing our infrastructure as a city, I think that's a massive priority. And then my only other point is I wouldn't be in favor of sacrificing parking for a travel lane on the valley floor either because, like I said, it's so hard to find parking living in an apartment, and we're just putting a burden on our residents who are already struggling. I think we should keep it the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
All right. More questions? Thanks. Appreciate that. Nice report.
Thank you.
All right, Angela, did we receive any comments for this item?
Yes, sir, we did. We have 2 speakers. The first one is Moline Schrader.
Hello?
Hi there. I had a whole little speech for you, but I've listened to your questions, so I'm going to basically throw it out. The ATP plan has been modified from its original, and I'd like to thank Yasmin and Mario. I challenged you guys to a bike ride. They took me up on it. We did 2 or 3 hours in the city, on the city streets. They picked the time, they picked the day. We both learned a lot. With that saying, the bike lanes here need a lot of work, even from that ATP plan, but it's a start, and you need a start. The Fletcher Parkway plan, Nobody parks on Fletcher Parkway. That's why it can accommodate such a nice cycle track. But Broadway, it has the room also. If you got rid of the parking, every single business on that route has its own parking lot. Cars only park there because drivers come in at night, park their work vehicles, and then leave them there, come in the morning and pick up their trucks and leave their cars. And that leaves the biker to negotiate in and out of the curb and into traffic. Well, that gives a car having to negotiate around the biker. Like you said, bikes are just getting in the road. Well, that's because they have no choice most of the time. So let's get rid of the parking where we can. Those are businesses, they have parking lots. Yes, on Broadway, there are 6 or 7 houses. Don't put it there. Put it down further. The apartments need to park in their parking lot. The businesses need to have their patrons in their own lots. And cars need to be stored somewhere else. Maine, that's it, has the same problem. There's been the same semi parked out there for 2.5 weeks. It hasn't moved. You bike, you have to go around the curb, you have to go around it. And once, like you said, you have to go out into the street. It makes the car not like the biker, but it's not the biker's fault. So we need to do that. We need to get rid of the parking on Broadway and Main and put the bike lane in there. There's plenty of room for a protected bike lane. No problem. It'll also make the city nicer looking and safer. Call it a beautification plan. That's about all you can do. As for the road diets, like you're worried about bad publicity, education, you're going to have a new media manager. Have them do it. That's their job to get the word out. Hey, I'll do it. I'll come out here and do the education plan for them. The Bike Coalition and SD Bike have education plans. Take advantage of them. They're all there. So let's not rule out anything. Let's just add to what you've got. If you don't like the one, the Fletcher Parkway going up the hill, don't do it. But do it in town. People from the east end of the valley need to get to the west end of the valley. That's where the shopping is, in the west end. But the plan doesn't really accommodate that. So let's try to do that. If you have questions, just ask me.
I've got a question for the city manager. The speaker raises a good point about these semis and things, and we've talked about it's been an issue. But I learned that there are permits available for some of these large commercial trucks to park on city streets. I don't understand that. Not an RV.
I'm looking to our chief.
I just need more information on that, and
I can provide the council with more information about.
You can get back to me later on that. I was surprised to hear that a commercial vehicle can park on the city street with a permit.
I'll get the council.
I'd like to understand why that's the case if it's true.
Okay. Thank you.
To the speaker, we are doing an enforcement on. We are doing an enforcement this month, I think from April 15th to May 15th, on these large.
Can I stop you for a second?
Well, ma'am, hang on just a second.
No, totally off topic. I am deaf, so I have to actually read your lips. So if you could, because the echo in here makes it hard for me.
Okay.
Okay, so slow down.
Okay, we're doing an enforcement of commercial trucks parked illegally on city streets from April 15th to May 15th because it's a safety issue, not only for bicyclists who have to move further into the traffic lane, but also for cars trying to get out of a parking lot. They can't see around these vehicles. So we are taking active protective measures this month.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay.
The last speaker is Will Radigan.
Well, welcome.
Hi, and thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Mayor Wells and members of the council. I'm Will Radigan. I'm from the San Diego County Bicycle Coalition. And first of all, I want to thank Mario and Andrew for putting together this excellent plan and for your great presentation and for all the great questions you've asked already. I, too, have a great speech, but a lot of the things I was going to talk about, Moline covered and you asked questions about. So I'll make a few notes. One is that San Diego Bicycle Coalition, in addition to advocating for better infrastructure, has really extensive education programs. And so a lot of what you're worried about with education, we provide free of cost, both for anyone who wants to take classes on bike safety and road safety in general. And we also provide those classes for free to schools and employers, and we're grant funded from SANDAG to do that. So we can solve a lot of those education issues. Other things, one is just that El Cajon is such a good candidate for this stuff. It's a flat city. It's got beautiful weather year-round. As you said, the valley floor is really dense. People bike and walk everywhere. But a lot of people feel really unsafe doing that. And unfortunately, they're not really wrong. We know that an average of 58 people are being killed or seriously injured in traffic collisions each year in El Cajon. And about 17 of those tend to be pedestrians. About 6 are people riding bikes. So this is a major issue, and we need to solve it quickly. And I just want to point to what Councilmember Goebel brought up about aligning the parking lane between the bike lane and the traffic lane, as they've done in San Diego. That's been done all over the country, and it's proven to be about 9 times safer than a standard shared lane. So it's proven to work really well. And I think a lot of El Cajon streets do provide opportunities for that. I think Main and Broadway are the chief two. And there's space. There's two traffic lanes. It's very possible to do the kind of road diet that Councilmember Ortiz mentioned. And so just want to reiterate, there is a real pressing safety issue in El Cajon. I think this plan addresses it really, really well. But it could go further. And specifically, it could build more Class 4 cycle tracks rather than Class 2 bike lanes, specifically on Main and Broadway. There's space to do that, and there's also some pretty substantial economic benefits for small businesses of doing road diets like that I'm happy to share information about. So thanks to everyone who worked on this project, and that's all from me.
Thank you. Any questions? Thanks. Appreciate it, Will.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion, or would somebody like to make a motion?
I just want to add one more thing, maybe feedback. I mean, I live on the valley floor. I drive every single road, and I'd love to dig into the data, but I just can't. I don't know if I can or not. Maybe we should, with regard to pedestrian accidents and cyclist accidents, because when I drive on the valley floor, I don't think most of the accidents for pedestrians are because, or for cyclists because they're not using bike lanes. I have to slam on my brakes at least once a week because people just aren't using crosswalks because they're being negligent. They're either strung out on drugs or, I was in the car with my child and they just slammed on the brakes. So while that might be high, I think there needs to be some context. I drive the valley floor all the time, and I think it's just people just being negligent in the road. So I want to put that out there with regard to context of some of our accidents. They're not the driver's fault. It's a well-lit area, and so there's that. And then with regard to road diets as well, only where it makes sense. And it made sense in South Magnolia because there wasn't a lot of traffic going there. So just to put that out there.
There was a little nugget in there, I hope it's not lost on us, is that the Director of Public Works and the Deputy Director of Public Works said, we'll go ride with this person. That's a pretty big deal. I don't know where there are a lot of cities where you're going to get your leadership out there saying, let's go experience this with you. So great work.
Graham? Phil brings up a good point, and I'd like to have that past anecdotal. And if we get a breakdown of the number of serious accidents that have happened and how many of those were by people acting recklessly or people just crossing appropriately or riding their bike appropriately.
Certainly. We looked at, I know Circulate San Diego put out some data that, El Cajon is the most dangerous city in the county and cited the number of fatalities we had, and we broke those down. This is over a year ago, and an astronomical number of those cases were at night, typically a transient, and typically on drugs, right? And so you could have all the education in the world, you could have all the best lit streets and best sidewalks and best crosswalks in the world. You can't keep somebody from stepping out if they're unaware of where they're at. So we'll look at some data. Probably 1 year is usually not quite enough. We'll probably look at 3 years of data, and we'll present an amendment to the council about that.
Yeah, so there may be a correlation between the previous thing we talked about, where the number of homeless people that are living here, and then the number of accidents. I think there probably is a correlation between that. It'd be good to have the data.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think that's important to bring into the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's really important not to just jump to conclusions. Okay, anybody else? Or somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move to adopt the next resolution approving the 2022 El Cajon Active Transportation Plan final report.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break. Be back in 5 minutes to continue and finish the meeting. All right, the last administrative report, item 14, is regarding the East County Advanced Water Purification Update Preparation. And I'll ask staff to tell us about this, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, Council members. I'm Yasmin Arellano, Director of Public Works. And I'm here today to request feedback from the City Council on questions or topics to be researched by staff prior to our next council meeting, where Patterdam Municipal Water District will provide an update on the East County Advanced Water Purification Project. And I took the liberty of taking a couple of slides from a previous presentation from Patterdam to recap the importance of this regional water and wastewater project. And this slide defines the project. The red X means the wastewater agencies will no longer send their wastewater flows, which are about 15 MGD, to the city of San Diego for treatment, with the exception of 5% for us is 5%. Will continue to go to city of San Diego for treatment, our peak wet weather flows. And then fail-safe for the project, brine and centrate for the project. The green line shows our combined flows, 15 million gallons per day, flowing into the East County Advanced Water Purification Facility. The blue line shows the purified water traveling east to Lake Jennings. And then the 11.5 million gallons per day is the volume of purified water deposited into Lake Jennings, mixed with the water in the lake, and then treated again at the Helix Water Treatment Facility, providing up to 30% of the East County's potable water. This map shows the program's service area. The hatch area is the city of El Cajon, together with Helix Water District, which is the lighter type of blue. The darker blue is Patterdam's, and the green is County of San Diego. The East County Advanced Water Purification Project benefits are that it will create a new local, sustainable, drought-proof drinking water supply. It will eliminate the 15 million gallons per day of wastewater discharge into the ocean. It would reduce the regions depending on imported water, and then also, as I mentioned, provide 30%, up to 30% of the region's water demand. The project utilized an alternative delivery method rather than the traditional design build bid. This method allows for increased collaboration between the project owner and consultants, leading to fewer unknowns and faster project delivery. The project is divided into 4 delivery packages. Package 1 is mostly the wastewater treatment, purification, the reclamation plant. Package 2 is the pipeline that conveys the water to Lake Jennings. Package 3 are the pump packages, pretty much. And then package 4 is the East Mission Gorge force main rehabilitation and the regional brine line. This project is on schedule. Padre Dam received the final guaranteed maximum price last week. And as I mentioned, our representative will be here at the next council meeting to provide us with an update. And we're here to request feedback and potential questions for staff to research prior to our next council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council questions?
Actually, with the mayor's consent, I had this brought to my colleagues here because I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the board of the AWP. And this is a big deal in about a month. The May 19th is the go, no-go on the whole project. It's about $850 million. It would substantially transform life in East County. And I just wanted to be able to give you all a chance to weigh in on questions before they come before us so they can come prepared rather than us fire questions on that day and they say, well, we'll have to get back to you, but 9 days later we got to make a decision. So this is a chance just to kind of a brainstorming on what kind of questions the council might have that they could come back with on the 10th to have a most effective presentation so that when I go into that meeting on May 19th, I really have the support of the council as well as everybody involved.
All right. Questions?
I think one question would be, so I work in the construction industry, and it's almost impossible to get any kind of materials nowadays. So are there any safeguards or measures that we can take right now to secure material and ensure that 2025 startup date or 2024 startup date? Is there anything that can be done now to ensure timely construction?
That's a great question, and these are the questions we're going to write down. We're not going to attempt to answer them today. We'll let the staff answer. Yasmin, do you want to introduce staff from the AWP who's here recording?
Yes, I would love to. We have Mark Nemec here with Padre Dam Municipal Water District, and John Mahoney. Yes, thank you.
So they're writing these questions down. I think those are good questions. The cost of materials, no doubt, has skyrocketed the cost of this project because of the supply chain.
Water is probably more expensive in California than anywhere else in the country. Is that a truth? Is water more expensive here than anywhere else? I'm assuming it is. How does this change the rate situation for our local rate users or local water users? Will it significantly change the amount of money that they're paying for water, or is it a small amount?
We can certainly look into that answer. We're going to have to compare. Padre Dam just put together a pro forma where they evaluated. They're evaluating the cost, projected costs from City of San Diego, and we're plugging in the cost that came in with the guaranteed maximum price received last week.
Great. Another question, kind of along the same lines, which I'm sure you don't have an answer for right now, but California is, at the legislative level, is talking about restricting jurisdictions to a certain number of units of water per person per household. Since we are taking this bold step to increase our water supply, does that change our allocation of water at a state level?
Question?
That is a good question. In the past, if you have your own local supply, you can draw from that local supply, and it really, in the past, any restrictions is restrictions on regional supply. So theoretically, this will give us a supply that the state can't touch. But we'll research that. The one thing that we don't talk a lot about this, but I think for me it's one of the biggest selling points, is that a lot of businesses are concerned about the cost of water, but just even the reliability of water in California. And so if you're on the fence of whether to stay in California or not, that could be what pushes you over. Having this local supply of water really gives some assurity on cost and also on reliability. So it's a huge economic development tool.
Another question I would have would be, how does this project affect local agriculture?
One more question. So the JPA consists of a handful of different municipalities. is there any way that, I mean, let's say Padre Dam board in 2 years says, we don't want to do this politically. Are they bound to stay in the project? Because obviously this project is only going to keep moving forward. The only way this project is going to continue to move forward is if these member agencies continue to support it. So is there any kind of document binding them to continue to put in the funding for this if politically the board changes direction? So that, because that's going to ultimately determine whether this project comes to fruition or not, similar to, I mean, any other kind of sandag, you know, politically they change, and then the projects that we would like, Highway 52, all of a sudden there's no funding for it. So that might not be a question that could be answered, but maybe just something to add some assurance.
There's an agreement, and so we can break that down and talk about how that agreement plays with each other. So yeah, definitely.
I think for my colleagues, what I've tried to state my position during the board meetings are what's the alternative? Because if this is an $850 million project, is it a better deal? What's the alternative cost? And if San Diego's pure water recycling is going to come on, that's going to increase. There's going to be costs passed on somewhere to how our wastewater is treated going forward. What's our cost, as you said, Mr. Mayor, compared to what? And I think it's important for the JPA to have a little bit of third party or some kind of checking on the compared to what. It would be one thing for the JPA to say, well, the alternative is this happens over here. Well, who verifies that that's a reasonable assumption? Not just, well, that's because you said it was terrible. Does anybody else say it's terrible as well? So if there's an opportunity for some independent verification of the alternative, because that's something the JPA doesn't control.
Thank you.
All right, more questions or feedback?
Good.
Well, Steve,
Is
thanks
there
for
an
bringing it.
education program component to this, an education component too? Because it kind of tags on with the mayor's comments about what's it going to cost taxpayers. And so it's, for many of us, we don't have yards because we can't afford the water. We're already doing low-flow toilets, low-flow shower heads. You know, it's constantly on the back of my mind, oh, I can't let this run because this is water, and it's, you know, it's not an unending source of water. But what is the impact on people? What is going to be the impact on residents? And are we going to really educate people? I mean, just because we've got this plant coming online and we're going to have our own source of water doesn't mean that you can just now have wonderful green yards and all of the valley floor, because it seems like, okay, yeah, we've got more water coming in, but we still need to be careful with it. And I think that that's an education issue. I don't know why I'm on education right now.
Ms. Mitchell,
I don't know.
Padre Dam has invested a lot of resources on some really cool education. There's actually on their website, and I'll forward after the council meeting, I'll forward to the council a link to their website, and you'll see on the left-hand side they have stuff for kids, stuff for adults, videos, virtual tours, a whole bunch of really fun stuff that they really promote this program. So I'll send that out to the council. So maybe we don't address that as part of the next meeting. But I'll send that out to council. I think you'll be impressed with what they've put together.
Because I know I do a lot, and I try and spread the word to my neighbors when I'm talking to them, but, you know, I can't reach everybody, and I just think that it's important to maybe reiterate, you know, the different steps that everybody can take to help save water. Yes, we're going to have more water coming in, but that doesn't mean we can just waste it.
Okay, well, Steve, thank you for bringing that to us. Is there any kind of action that you think we need to do? Okay, let me see if there's any speaker cards on this item.
We have no speakers, sir.
Okay, then I think we're finished, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. There are no commission reports on today's agenda. We've gone through activities reports. There are no joint council member reports and no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first readings of ordinance on today's agenda. We have the reading and adoption of two ordinances. Item 20 is to approve the adoption of a district map for council member elections. I'll ask the city clerk to read the title, but first, Angela, are there any speaker cards for this item?
We have no speakers, sir.
Then would you go ahead and read the title?
The title reads, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Cajon, California, approving 4 council districts following the 2020 decennial federal census and adopting a new map describing the boundaries of each of the districts.
All right, I make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Item 21 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 3.20 regarding bidding and written contracts. I'll ask our city clerk to read the title, but first, Angela, do we have any speaker cards?
No speaker cards, sir.
Then please recite the title.
The title is An Ordinance to Amend Sections 3.20.005, 3.20.010, 3.20.020, 3.20.120, and 3.20.130 of Chapter 3.20 of Title III of the El Cajon Municipal Code to restrict the city manager's powers and duties relating to purchases of military equipment, supplies, or other property for law enforcement use.
Make a motion to adopt.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
There are no closed sessions on today's agenda, and that brings us to the adjournment. The adjourned regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 26th day of April 2022, is adjourned until Tuesday, May 10th, 2022 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you all very much.